Is, as you know, a renewal. It was first passed by the Multnomah County voters in 2016, or no, 2010, and then renewed in 2016. So it is not a new tax, it's just a renewal of a current one. It is 5 cents every $1,000 assessed value. The median, the true median assessed value, by the way, of Multnomah County, fun fact, is $200,930 is the median assessed value. So that makes the cost $10.04 a year for the average taxpayer. And for that, of course, they get free admission. Like there is I always compare us to the Smithsonian. The Smithsonian, however, gets $1 billion a year from federal money. And of course, free admission for folks when they're back in Washington, D.C. Here, it's free admission, every day we're open to Multnomah County residents in return for the average of $10.04 a year that they pay. And with that money, of course, that supports our operations. It supports all the work we do. Most added benefit to Multnomah County. Almost every county in Oregon does have a county historical society that is funded to some degree by the county. There's two counties, Crook and Klamath of all places, who you think would be very conservative, who actually have similar funding mechanisms to ours. Voters have passed funding to help protect the history. So we are here every day for Multnomah County residents. I mentioned it also funds 4 East County historical societies. We give $40,000 a year from the funds to each of those 4 societies: Gresham, Troutdale, Crown Point, and the ECHO, it's called, East County Historical Organization. So that money, $40,000 a year, is basically keeps those places open and running throughout the year for East County history. We also have pledged we have a newly named gallery. It's an old gallery. We named it the Nato Family Gallery after a wonderful contribution from Ann Nato Campbell. And it's our intention to, we've already started the work on it, to put a permanent exhibit on the history of the city of Portland in that gallery. It is a request we get perhaps most often of visitors coming in, especially visitors from outside of Portland. They come in and say, hey, I want to know more about Portland. So we've heard enough of that. And so we're going to, next couple of years, we'll be doing the process of an entirely new permanent exhibit on the city of Portland in that gallery. Just very proud of what we've done this last year, a year and a half. I mean, since March. If you had told me we would be as active and vital and strong as we are, 13 months later, I don't know if I would have said it. We have turned on a dime, open when we can, obviously closed when we, according to the orders of the state, when we can't be open. But since people have been reluctant to come here or couldn't come here, we're taking the museum to them. Phenomenal amount of Zoom programs, virtual programs, lectures, you name it. We are on Zoom all the time. Since one of the biggest joys of being here every day during normal times is we're chock full of school students. And of course, since students haven't been able to come here, no field trips, we're taking OHS to them. We've provided curriculum. We've written curriculum K through 12 for our permanent exhibit, Experience Oregon, providing it to teachers. We just entered into a new partnership with the Portland Public Schools, where we'll be writing 3rd grade curriculum on the history of the city of Portland. That'll be a 3rd grade, I think, requirement in Portland schools, and they've asked us to write the curriculum. So we're doing that. We've been providing training for teachers on history, curriculum again for teachers, doing all that we can to keep kids, interested in history. One of the pledges we made that is specifically made in the levy, and that we have really remained true to for 10 years and will continue to do so if it's renewed, is to make sure that we are reflecting the diversity of Multnomah County population. And as you've seen with our exhibits, with our programs, with our publications, we have really remained true to that, getting a reputation for telling the true story of Oregon, the good, the bad, and the ugly, as I say, whether that's through the special issue of OHQ devoted entirely to the issue of Oregon's white supremacist past, the partnerships we formed with many diverse audiences here in Oregon and in Portland. We're making sure that the whole history is told. We're not your grandfather's old historical society anymore about Lewis and Clark. We're about so much more than that. The funds that the county provides have given us the freedom to knowing that those funds, that stable floor is there, to go to our donors, our often big donors, and ask not for operating money, but to use their money for what we have done for. We raised a $9 million capital campaign, which funded the new Experience Oregon exhibit, which won 2 national awards last year as one of the best new exhibits in the country, mainly because it is so open and honest about Oregon history and it tells the diverse stories. It funded the first refurbishing, redoing of our research library since the building was opened 50 plus years ago. That's still ongoing, but this summer we'll open the new research library. And it funded an upgrade in our digital vault. Every museum, of course, every art gallery is having to digitize its collection. And so we're doing it at a record pace. And so people will be able to go online and be able to download our items, our exhibits, our collection, all that. Mary, am I missing anything?
Well, I mean, everything you're saying, I'm just writing notes and reflecting on, my time directly with Oregon Historical Society. I've loved history and been involved in a lot of different organizations, from Lone Fir Cemetery to Friends of History at Portland State. And every person I talk to who benefits from learning more about history points to OHS and says they're such a tremendous partner. Oregon Historical Society could certainly spend all of their time looking inward with all the artifacts that people donate to them. They could spend all their time archiving and preserving these pieces, but instead they're spending so much of their time, on top of that work, they are out pushing history. Just this week, I was exhausted following Kerry on Zoom with all his speaking engagements, talking about the restaurant industry's challenges that they're facing and giving a historical content and a community content around that. The bottle bill yesterday with Earth Day, talking about Tom McCall and other stakeholders. We need history so much right now as we're trying to understand what's happening today. The more that we can point to history for understanding and comfort and inspiration, I just am incredibly proud of everything that Kerry's team has done. And it's so for our community right now.
Yeah, I don't know if you saw the graffiti that was on our window after last week's incident.
Yeah, it said no more history, right?
No more history. Yeah, what that means, I have no idea what that means. But, as I say, that's exactly the opposite of what we need at this point. We need more history and more understanding of history and how it impacts today. I think I mentioned to Mark when I talked with him several months ago, the fact that we did hear from some people who went through the new exhibit, who have seen what we're doing and think that you make me feel guilty for being a white man, is what someone told us. And my answer to that is, look, you're not responsible for what happened 150 years ago, 100 years ago, 50 years ago, but you're responsible for knowing what happened and for understanding how that continues to impact Oregon today. The fact that Oregon banned all Black people from living in Oregon in our original Constitution, that 150 plus years ago, that still impacts Oregon, and you have to understand.
So Kerry and Mary, a couple of questions. First of all, how much money does this generate for you on an annual basis?
3 million-ish plus. If you look in the ballot measure, it says there is an exact estimate of what they foresee. It's for example, 3.3 million for fiscal year 2021 to 22. Okay, they raised it up a little bit each year.
And what is your annual budget?
Annual budget is depending on what we're doing, the projects we're having, it varies between 8 and 9 million.
Oh, so this is 30% of your budget.
It's a substantial portion, no doubt about it.
Yeah.
So, and what's the size of your endowment?
About 6 million.
So, here's the tough question for you guys.
Yeah. So,
I mean, we've been supportive of this measure in the
Right.
past, and you have no opposition, but yours is the only cultural institution in Multnomah County that has a permanent tax base.
oops.
So, why doesn't the Portland Ballet or the Opera or the Art Museum, or, I could name 20 others. Why you and not them?
One, because I think the work we provide, the service we provide, there is a public service aspect to it. There is keeping the history of Multnomah County, keeping the history of course, the state of Oregon. Two, we offer the symphony, the orchestra, the ballet. They couldn't offer what we offer, which is free admission every day of the year. There's no way that if the public was providing funding to the ballet, that everybody could go to the ballet for free. That's not a sustainable model for anything like that, or for the art museum, whose budget, exceeds ours by multiple times. They are admission dependent as part of their financing. This has allowed us, frankly, to not be admission dependent, but because we offer free admission. That's the revenue we did get from admission from Multnomah County is now gone, replaced by the by the levy. So offering,
admission certainly isn't just entertainment purposes. It's kind of the lifeblood to schools. The 8,000 kids that come through there. I know it's organizing school trips. To charge for that to schools would be really prohibitive.
No, they said this has allowed us to offer free admission to all Multnomah County residents. Before the pandemic, they were voting with their feet. I mean, attendance has more than doubled, almost trebled since the start of the levy, since I arrived here. And free access to a world-class research library. The benefit we have, the tax money comes with benefits. Whereas I don't see how, again, I know the symphony, the orchestra, the theaters, there's no model for them offering free admission.
So let's talk about this. You've been given the task of developing curriculum for elementary schools about the history of the city of Portland. That strikes me as quicksand, and I'm just wondering how you're going to go doing that, who you're going to be advising. At a moment in time when you're being criticized rightly or wrongly for not portraying a full enough history of this city, you're now going to be doing so in a formal way in the schools. And I'm just wondering, how are you going to navigate that?
Well, obviously they have will supervise and approve and whatever we do. We under the contract, we are hiring a curriculum writer. Someone with the education, with experience, with the background that does this type of stuff, and we will provide all the materials, the artifacts, the documents, everything that we have here on the history of Portland. But obviously, Portland Public Schools has the final say. They will either approve of it or say this works, this doesn't. Fix this, fix that. So
I'm just wondering.
Well, my understanding is that they want this. That
yes,
in public schools, they don't want to be in the business of doing what Oregon Historical Society does, and they want a partnership. And saying that, I think anybody who looks at history and they don't see themselves in it as much as they used to, certainly if you're a white American compared to a first or second generation American of color. I think OHS is really giving the opportunity to tell a broader story about our history and keep adding to history. And that's something that the schools want a partnership with on.
Yeah, the schools reached out to us. We weren't seeking this. They contacted us because they've loved what we've been providing to their teachers and the curriculum we do have online. And so they proposed this to us, and I think we worked out a good arrangement. And frankly, if it works, they'll probably come back to us for more. If it doesn't work, then we've learned a lesson. So
sure. I think one of the reasons Mark is asking this question is, at least it occurs to me, that you only have to look down south of here to San Francisco to see how conversations around history in the public school
Right.
system can turn combustive to the point where now the New Yorker and the New York Times are on your doorstep and you're on Fox News. I'm curious how you plan to avoid that problem.
Well, we'll see again. You know, we are. I guess this is a test case. You know, they ask, and we said, you know,
Well,
we've got all the material here. We've got the archives. We've got everything they need to know.
I think what I'm trying to get to is a larger question. I mean, Carrie, you've been very articulate in the last couple months about how you and your organization have been far ahead of a lot of cultural organizations in acknowledging the racist past in Oregon. And I don't disagree with that at all, but I'm wondering if, even with that, if over the past year, you have rethought the retelling of Oregon history and wondering if we have to double down. So, you know, let me give you one example that's just a personal example. We put on an event called Tech Fest Northwest, and we're trying to get some support for sponsorships to give money to Black funded startups. And I got one of the largest banks in Portland to tell me they wouldn't do it because they know what's going to happen is someone's going to stand on stage and talk about the history of redlining. And the bank said, I'm sick of hearing it. So, you know, which of course makes me want to double down and talk about it even some more. But I guess my question is, despite what you have done, and I don't want to take anything away from you and your predecessors, has the last year suggested, no, we actually need to do a whole lot more, which, you know, may create some problems with your donors and subscribers and members?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I mean, I think we're doing a great deal, and we'll just keep doing what we've been doing. I don't know if we need to say, okay, let's double and triple and quadruple what we're doing, because we're doing a lot. But we also are, you know, like we have an exhibit now on the history of soccer in Portland and in Oregon, and we're going to do an exhibit on the history of winter sports in Oregon. I mean, we also have to provide other things. You know, we're not 100%, you know, just focused on those issues. So
you know, Carrie, could I add one thing quickly? As someone who just kind of devours history and loves storytelling and takes comfort in going to the past to understand what the future holds, you name any topic and the Oregon Historical Society has context for it. So if you want to talk, you're tired of hearing about redlining and you want to talk about white settlers and stories that might make you feel good, Oregon Historical Society has something for you. If you're in a mood to learn more about injustices that happened at the turn of the century and you want to be contemplative and kind of feel bad, Oregon Historical Society has a story for you. I think that that's the beauty of it, is that they have a menu for the time and the place and the mood that you're in. And I just am here to tell you that I would say it's bookended between senior citizens who have been confined to their homes that need to connect and have done so through programming, to kids who are starving for more storytelling and understanding of their community, particularly kids of color. It's a lifeline right now to understand history. And it is a range of emotions when you digest it, but OHS is resilient. They can handle the criticism. They can handle their windows getting smashed, you know, and they're going to persevere. And I think we need institutions like that who aren't afraid.
Thinking of building a moat, you know, any alligators that I could get so.
It's tough work. It's tough for our board. Exactly what you described, Mark, we talk about all the time. And there's no tastes great, less filling. We just have to forge ahead and do it all.
How, I think one last question. Other than your financial stability and other than the number of people that attend your facility or you engage with, how else does OHS define success?
Oh, good question. You know, when I came here 10 years ago, I said I had 3 missions. One was, what you said, financial stability, because the place was going belly up, no doubt about it. And so, and 10 years ago, if the levy hadn't passed, this place might not be here anymore. And now I'll be open. If it doesn't pass, if the commissioners chose not to put it on the ballot, if the voters chose not to do it again, we'll survive. We'll have to be more careful. We'll have to raise more private money. Obviously, we couldn't afford to offer free admission. So it would decline the number of people who come in and the chance to see history. But financial stability is, for any nonprofit, as you saw recently with the Children's Museum, has got to be part of the, you can't define success any other way. The second one thing I said was relevance. We had in the bad years before the first levy, before I got here, we had tended to become the Portland Historical Society and not the Oregon Historical Society. And there were no programs anywhere else. We weren't outreaching to the museums across the state. That's all changed. Because of our stability, we are the big brother here in the state of historical museums. We have reached out constantly to the museums here in Portland, Jewish Museum, the Chinese Museum, the Japanese American Museum, offering help, offering advice, offering my staff whatever they need, in constant contact with all of our affiliates around the state. So we are the Oregon Historical Society. And then the third was the quality of what we were offering. And frankly, when you're not financially stable, you don't have quality programs, you don't have quality exhibits, you don't have, anything of quality. And now we have, like I said, exhibits that have won awards from across the country, and publications like OHQ that's winning national awards. So that, I define success as saying financially stable, quality programs, relevant programs, and record in the year before the pandemic, record admission, record interest in OHS. So we're fulfilling our mission. That's we're also how we're succeeding. So making Oregon history accessible to everybody.
Is there a state historical society that's the paradigm, that's considered to be the model in the U.S. for both?
Some of the good ones are Minnesota. Minnesota is a good one, and most other state historical societies are state agencies. If I were in Idaho or Washington, we'd all be state employees with PERS. Wouldn't that be nice? At OHS. And the state provides, in Washington, Idaho, somewhere between 70 and 80% of the funding. They still are expected to make money, through admission, through sales. The Washington State Historical Society, they have a parking lot. It's kind of their big money maker that's used by lots of other people. But for whatever reason, since 1898, when we were founded as a 501c3, a nonprofit. And the state has usually recognized, but not always, that if not for us, they would have to do some of what we're doing. They cut us off for a couple of sessions before 2010. And frankly, I think, as you know, Mark, that was, I think, one of the reasons I was hired. I was not the typical historical society director. I didn't have a doctorate in history. I wasn't a museum professional, but I knew Oregon and knew the people in Oregon, and had compromising photos of many state legislators. So that was just
that
kidding.
Always helped.
So
In a way, that's history.
yeah, and
exactly.
they have been supportive. I think they greatly understand what. I was really proud this year. Every year it's a tradition in the Oregon House where the speaker gives a gift to the other members of the House of Representatives. I don't know what they've given over years, but this year, Tina, Speaker Kotek, contacted me, and she wanted to give the gift of history, and she asked us to select 5 or 6 Oregon Historical Quarterly issues that were particularly important, relevant, great of Oregon history. In that we had 60 copies of left over to give to everybody. And that was the gift she gave them, was the gift of history this year. Each representative got a little bag with, I think, 6 issues of OHQ in it. So made me feel good that we're doing our job. So.
Sophie,
right.
any questions?
Oh, you're on mute, Sophie. There you go.
Okay, I'm good. Just going back really quickly to the PPS curriculum.
Yeah.
Do you know what sort of like advising board or who they're looking for in regards to representation to inform that process?
We'll be putting that together, and it'll be a very broad, well, as it was, this is not new to us. We had a similar board for the Experience Oregon exhibit, the new exhibit we did, where we met with Indigenous people, all minority groups. We're also right now putting together a new exhibit advisory committee for the City of Portland exhibit to make sure that everyone's stories are being heard and told. So yeah, it'll be a process like that. So.
And is this the first time PPS has outsourced that process?
I don't know. I would assume it might be, but I couldn't tell you. So.
Well, and Carrie, don't they haven't they had other partnerships or one-offs? I mean, we've always been supporting Portland Public Schools.
Right, and some of it is they may have gone through the state board of the Oregon Education Department, which also does some curriculum as well.
Yeah.
So.
Did you guys welcome that partnership, or does
Yeah, I mean, we talked about it, and we were, I mean, frankly, we were excited that they asked, because I think it's an endorsement of what we do and what they've seen bringing their kids here, all the kids here. So yeah, we're looking at this as a trial. If it works, maybe they'll ask us again. If not, maybe we won't want to do it again. Maybe it'll be too controversial. So, but
Carrie, another part of it is right now we're going through Oregon History Day, and there's they've had to go virtual the past 2 years, and I think there were 127 submissions throughout the state of students who are presenting documentaries and papers and kind of what were those exhibitions that we used to do, the trifold thing. So that continues to grow, and it's building a pipeline of students who understand history and excel in it. So I think there is a growing demand amongst students to learn more about what's going on in history. They like to tell their parents, hey, did you know this about Oregon? Did you know this about our city? It's a great conversation piece for them and context when they grow up and are in the workplace.
Mm-hmm.
And for the Experience Oregon curriculum, we have it, it's like 5 curriculums. It's K through 2, 3 through 5, 6, this type of thing. The Portland one that they've asked us to work on is just specifically 3rd grade. So, I mean, obviously you can't, at 3rd grade, you can't deal with some issues, or you have to be, your audience are 3rd graders. So.
Perfect, thanks.
These are great questions.
Well,
it's great for our board to hear what these questions are as well.
I think, unfortunately, I think we've come to the end of them.
Yep, there you go.
Mark, unless you have more, I think that's it from my end.
Well, no, I mean, my only other question is, Carrie, when we last visited, I think we asked you about the whole issue of renaming statues, schools. And if I recall, you were fairly blunt. You thought we were rushing to judgment. I guess I'm wondering whether or not I'm recalling.
No, I don't.
Said correctly, and if you've refined your position at all.
No, I don't think we're rushing to judgment. I mean, I think anytime people talk about history, I think it's a good thing. There just needs to be a process. Nobody's got the right to tie some chains to the back of their truck and to drag down Thomas Jefferson, Abraham Lincoln, Martin Luther King, you name them, who are on public grounds. And we don't. The statues that have all been knocked down are the ones the city owns them. We don't own them. We have nothing to do with them. But that is not the way to tackle this issue. The way to tackle the issue is to have a process, a conversation, a community-wide engagement where, hey, should these statues be here? Do we want to replace them? Should we replace them with, who do we replace them with? I mean, that's the way to do it.
And conversely, if somebody went up and tore down York up at Mount Tabor, it would be very upsetting to the community. I mean.
So, I'm sorry, I forgot. We have renamed at least one school in the city of Portland already,
Wilson
right?
High School is now Ida B. Wells.
Right. So was that done too quickly without appropriate process?
No, that was a long process, as I recall. So they went through meetings, and the students voted, and they did research. I mean, and that's the way to do that. There are people out there, of course, I'm not one of them, who say, you know, oh gosh, this is, you know, you can't change history, and Confederate generals, and thankfully we don't have any up in Oregon, they were all traitors in my book, and the statues weren't put up after the Civil War. They were put up in the Jim Crow era to send a message. But the people who say, you know, once the statue's up, it should always be there, I always tell them, you know, do you think that when he retired after his career as an American hero, and the LA school district named the O.J. Simpson Elementary School, do you think that should still be there? No. Things change, you know, perspectives change. So I'm all for, and Woodrow Wilson was an awful racist, no doubt about it. He moved America backwards. Roosevelt and Taft had started to move America forward. They were allowing blacks to work in the federal government, to manage people in federal government. Wilson, absolutely not. He took it backwards. He was an awful racist. Showed the movie Birth of the Nation in the White House. You know, the fact that his name's on a high school in Oregon when he had absolutely nothing to do with Oregon, of course. Yeah, I was all for getting rid of that name. So,
a question for you on the same note. Obviously, there's been a lot of public outrage and conversation regarding the repeated destruction of your front windows. Seems like there's a small group of activists, and maybe perhaps, according to the DA, one Reed College student in particular, who keeps
Thank you for that article.
Sure.
That was so interesting.
It is.
Wait, Aaron, we didn't find out whether that person was a history major, did we?
No, we still don't know what his major is. That would.
I thought it was anthropology. I'd heard that somewhere.
It could be.
So,
I don't know. I'd have to find out. That would be very interesting.
as a Willamette University graduate, I've always hated those bastards at Reed, and then this makes me even doubly so.
Here's my question. Ironically, so I know the damage this time around was $20,000.
Yeah.
How much are you raising off of this?
Off of this one, I know off of the other one, people, did donate money, and we were very honest when they called and asked, and we said we have insurance. The damage was insured, and any money that was given to us for security, that type of thing, for windows, we have used to upgrade another security, new cameras, new this, new that, new doors. But we had insurance, we were insured. I don't know, like a lot of businesses in downtown Portland, I don't know if insurance companies, what our renewal rate is going to be when the time comes to renew insurance. It's going to be much bigger.
Well, I'm so grateful the laminate that was placed after the October one really helped mitigate.
We did upgrade after the October one to windows that are impenetrable. You can kind of crack them, spider web them. You can't break through them, which of course they did last time and threw the flare in and stole the quilt and did all the damage that they did then. This time this guy could only shatter three of the windows. So is it frustrating and depressing that they continue to, I don't want to say continue, I mean, this was second time, but vandalism is not the answer. And I've been very open in saying that if history tells us anything, it's that, again, few things improve because of vandalism. They improve because of community discussions and working together, which is what needs to happen here. Mark, one thing.
And many of the donor communication was tied around, supporting the mission of the organization, the good work, supporting history, more history. Like Carrie said, there were some of the donations specific to the building itself, but most was about support of the partnerships and the history that came in.
I'm just curious if you've seen.
Appreciate, Mark, you mentioned the names. My wife, as you may or may not know, has been chairman of the Beaverton School Board the last 3 years, and boy, has that been fun for her, as you can imagine. But they just recently renamed a school, Timberland was what the old name was, and they had this whole process that the school board wasn't involved with until the very end. And they wanted to put an indigenous name on it because there is no indigenous names in Beaverton schools yet. And it was on what used to be indigenous land, obviously. One of the names that the committee brought forward, because it means something, was Tumchuck. Not Tim Chuck, but Tumchuck. And Becky said, absolutely not. So
I'm just curious, and I'm sorry, I'm going to keep asking this, if you've seen a fundraising rise since October.
since October, we saw an initial hit after the break-in, no doubt about it. But I don't, not anything that has lasted long term. Of course, and we've been going out, frequently, as all nonprofits have during this pandemic, to say, hey, look, many of our revenue streams were compromised. Admission outside of Multnomah County, of course, has dropped, off the face of the earth. Our annual History Makers Gala canceled. You can't, can do a gala. Gift shop, bookstore sales down. All our revenue streams were compromised. So and when the pandemic hit, we immediately cut expenses. I froze. I took a pay cut. All senior management took a pay cut to see, what it was going to take to ride through, the pandemic. And it's still, of course, impacting us. So
I think from what I recall in development meetings is that there was a big jump in membership renewal, which was exciting because I think people can't physically come down and protect the building. So the best way to support us and support what we're doing is through membership. That was a nice, and if you're implying that we're encouraging vandalism to get more donations, I wish we were that clever.
No implication whatsoever. I was just curious about unintended consequences.
Although I did get an email from one of the anarchy type supporters accusing me of stealing the African American quilt in October. They were sure that I had done that to pin it on the anarchists. So if only I had thought about that. So, and that, by the way, that's running us $20,000, $30,000 to put that quilt back to salvage it. So.
And we got donations around that,
right.
Focused on the quilt, didn't we? Yeah.
My guess is we're about done here. So I was hoping to take a couple minutes and change the subject. Mary, you work for Ferguson, correct?
Correct.
And I'm just wondering, you guys are downtown. I assume you've got a substantial employee base. Are you coming back to Portland? When?
We are coming back to Portland. We have about 50 employees, and throughout the summer, we're looking at more of a hybrid model until everybody gets vaccinated. Certainly security and safety is a big deal for our clients and our employees. There isn't a big hurry to come back until we better understand what's going on with the safety of the city, but we're committed to being a part of its reopening.
But you're not exploring getting out of your lease, moving elsewhere, or even downsizing, or?
No, that's a great question. We have a lease that a 5-year lease, and certainly we're always as running a good business, having contingency plans in place should it not make business sense to be in Portland any longer, but there are no plans in subletting and being elsewhere. I think the thing that's tough for us is if we moved, where would we move? And what are the pros and cons of that? And ultimately what it comes down to for us, even though we have clients in 36 states and the concentration of it is in the Pacific Northwest, Portland's the hub and everything outside of Portland is the spoke. So what happens when you leave the hub? One thing, positive outcome of this is that we've got clients who want to Zoom more, so we can connect with them on that front and we're going to them. But, it's kind of like with the stock market, we're not going to sell at the bottom. We want to give Portland a chance to see what's going to happen. But we have concerns like so many other businesses.
And have you expressed those concerns to City Hall?
We've always had a tradition of being involved with Portland Business Alliance. And I know that is the channel that we've been communicating our message collaboratively with other professional services firms. But yeah, there's definitely frustration and problems that were here long before COVID. I think it's just coming to reality that this is what we have to face and we have to decide what kind of city we want to be. And of course, for me, I'm Like, let's look back to history and see what we did before when we've hit hard times. Portland's had a lot of hard times in history. And I think we can get through this. And the good news is that people are still moving here despite our challenges.
All right, well, thank you. Is that it, Aaron?
It is. Thank you so much to everyone for coming in today and having this conversation. Mark, if you and Sophie will stay on the line for a moment after we finish, I really appreciate all your time. I'm going to turn the recording off.
Yeah, thank you. Nice to meet you, Sophie. You meet you. So.
Very
And
good to
thank
see
you for your
Mary.
quality
Yeah.
journalism. You all are incredible, how you've survived over the years too. I mean, in all the audiences that you serve, you do a great job.